Yet another race and yet another instance of Lewis Hamilton grabbing all the headlines from the race. He won the Turkish Grand Prix 2020, and with that he won his seventh drivers title. He is now equal with Formula One's legend Michael Schumacher with 7 titles apiece. Now, at the end of the race, Hamilton said that he is still feeling good about his racecraft and is hungry for more. So you never know how much he's going to end up with. But for now, he has won 7 titles officially. At the beginning of the race, no one would have given him a chance to take his car which was struggling on this track, especially in the wet weather conditions, as we saw in qualifying, to take that particular piece of machinery to the end of the finish line in first position. No one would have given a chance, but that is exactly what he did. A lot of people argue that Hamilton wins so many races and so many titles just because he has the best car underneath him. Now, in most cases, in most of the cases it might still be true, but yesterday was a very apt example of why his racecraft is better than anyone else's on the grid. Now, his teammate who had the same car underneath him finished P14, and he was lapped by Lewis Hamilton in that exact race. This was a torrid race for Valtteri Bottas, who was the only man who could have stopped Lewis Hamilton from winning the title yesterday. So let's quickly talk about what exactly happened in yesterday's race. Lance Stroll, pole position, his first ever pole position. Max Verstappen in P2, Sergio Perez in P3, and Alexander Albon in P4. As the lights went out, both Red Bulls had a horrendous start, and almost everyone in the front of the grid overtook him, and both of the Red Bulls fell towards the back by the end of lap 1. Sebastian Vettel had a brilliant start. He started at P11 and went on to be P3 by the end of lap 1. Lewis Hamilton, by the end of the opening few laps, was lapping very slowly, and he had fallen back to P6 and was nearly a pit stop behind Lance Stroll, who was leading. All these cars and all the drivers on the grid, barring the two Williams, started the race on full wet weather tires, and as the track dried up going into the race, most everyone switched to the intermediate tires, which was obviously quicker in the slightly drier conditions as when the race started. So this entire changing to intermediate tires again moved the grid around massively, but still Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez were doing very well at the front of the grid. Max Verstappen and Alexander Albon both made their way through the pack and were looking to challenge the top two positions to take a victory in this race. Now, the Red Bulls and the Racing Point coming into the weekend on the practice sessions and as well as in the qualifying sessions were the fastest, especially in the wet conditions, but they didn't realize that the rest of the pack was also starting to increase their pace. And as the intermediate tires got warmer and slowly after a point became completely slick tires because it had completely worn out, the pace started coming back to the likes of Mercedes and the likes of Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton just pitted once in a race where each and every driver apart from him and Sergio Perez pitted more than once. They generally the car who finished in P3 and P4 pit twice, Max Verstappen pit twice, Alexander Albon pit twice. So everyone had to pit more than once to keep fresh tires on them. But Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez managed to manage their tires very well to the finish of the race, and that's why they had to do just one pit stop when they switched from the wets to the intermediates. So Lewis Hamilton finished the race in P1. Sergio Perez, it was a frantic last lap as well. Lewis Hamilton was off in the distance, winning the race by comfortable margin of 25 seconds. But back in the back towards P2, 3 and 4, Sergio Perez was running P2, Charlie Leclerc was running P3, and Sebastian Vettel was running P4, and all of them were covered by less than a second. They were very close to each other and anything could have happened. This was building up towards the last lap, And eventually, Charles Leclerc took the position from Sergio Perez, but overcooked it on the second last turn of the last lap. Went wide. Sergio Perez retook P2, and Sebastian Vettel also overtook him to finish on the podium for the first time this season. So, Hamilton in P1, 7-time world champion. Sergio Perez in P2, his first podium since Italy 2011, and Sebastian Vettel, who will be replacing Sergio Perez at Racing Point next season, wins his first podium of this season. A very good advertisement for the sport of Formula One. Yesterday's race, it was, one of those races where you cannot put your finger on who is going to win the race until the last lap of the race. I mean, Hamilton did have that comfortable 25-second margin towards the end, but in the beginning we had as many as 4 different people leading the race. Lance Stroll was leading the race at one point in time. Sergio Perez was leading the race. Max Verstappen was leading the race. Alexander Albon was leading the race, but none of them managed to finally win it. It was the master, 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. A special word and mention for both the Ferrari drivers. Their cars really came alive during in those wet conditions, and they managed to finish P3, and P4. P5 went to Carlos Sainz, who will be going to Ferrari next season, and 6th went to Max Verstappen, who had a couple of offs in the race. He spun a few times in the race, which put him back on the grid, but it was not the exact 300th Grand Prix that Red Bull were wishing for. All in all, a very exciting race, great advertisement for the sport, and come 2022, when the levels of downforce are cut and we'll see more kind of this form of racing, more wheel-to-wheel action, and that's what racing is all about, I guess. Next up, we are going to Bahrain, and the last leg of the season is upon us with 2 races in Bahrain, and then we go to the season finale in Abu Dhabi. Lewis Hamilton, world champion yet again.